Hi, I'm Jenny Holt, and this is my presentation called From Overwhelm to Oasis, where I am going to talk about my projects that I did throughout this course. First, let me start by introducing myself. I am Jenny, a 43-year-old single mom of two girls, both of which are almost grown. I have one in her sophomore year of college and the other in her senior year of high school. I am a school teacher and a Zumba instructor. I have been teaching school for 22 years. I taught both kindergarten and first grade, and I am currently in a first grade classroom. I've also been teaching at two different schools, and the last 12 years have been at my current school. After doing many of the personality tests and looking to see who I am and what my strengths and weaknesses are, I am a anxious worrier. I'm constantly trying to do all the things by myself, take on too much. And that leads to anxiety and worrying and always feeling like I'm never enough and how to do more. And this will tie into the projects that I chose to do for this course. So let me first start off by talking about what my projects were for this semester. My first project was about helping my daughter with people pleasing. She is my senior in high school. She has had a very hard time with getting attention from her father, which has led to people pleasing issues for everyone. So, my goal with her was to see how I could help her have assurance in herself so that she did not feel like she was constantly having to please everyone. However, upon doing both of these projects, I feel like if I had done the self development project first, I would have been better with the other development project with helping her, because after a lot of reflection, I realized that some of the problems that she had and has with people pleasing stem from me and my own personal issues. So, my self development project was learning how to manage this stress and anxiety because I had so much anxiety that I was becoming depressed and I did not have a very good outlook on life. And I knew that at my age, I really needed to change that now because I feared that if I did not go ahead and begin to change that, it was going to get worse. So begins my stress management journey. After taking the personality trait test, I realized that my biggest personality trait is neuroticism. It really upset me at first when I read this because growing up in the time that I did, we saw calling somebody neurotic as being an insult. So my first thought was, oh my goodness, I cannot be neurotic. What in the world? But the more I read about this and the more I dove into it and dug into it, I realized that I really was neurotic. And so this is where my anxious behaviors stem from, because being neurotic doesn't necessarily mean that you're crazy or there's something wrong with you, but it means that there are a lot of things you handle with your emotions and that you don't handle stress well. So you end up anxious or depressed, or you overreact when things don't go the way that they should. I began looking into some theorists and their insights to see how I was going to plan to help myself manage this stress. So I realized that I was in the seventh stage of Erickson's theory of generativity versus stagnation. When I read about this, I saw that he said this is often the most difficult and longest stage that you have to go to, because not only are you trying to raise your own children and deal with them, you're also now having to take care of your parents who are older. And now you're questioning your own life. Like perhaps you didn't meet the goals that you thought you were going to meet in the sixth stage. So now you're thinking, who am I? What am I doing with my life? And that's why a lot of people go through a midlife crisis at this age. Another theorist that I looked into is Cannon, and Cannon developed theories based on stress and believed that stress could affect your health with your blood pressure, with breathing difficulties, with insomnia, things that I was already dealing with being in the stage of life I am and my hormones changing. And then Selye believed that stress mirrored a fight or flight response. And he also believed that there was a link between stress and disease. He believed that if stress was not managed, that this could lead to bigger things like hypertension, being overweight, even cancer. I knew this meant I had to get a hold of this now. I decided to develop an action plan. I created a calendar and had hearts on this calendar, and I would gauge each day, like, was this a really good day where I didn't have a lot of stress and I didn't have a lot of panic attacks and anxiety? Was it a midday where I had a little bit but I got it under control? Or was this a red day where it was horrible, I had a horrible outlook on life, and there was just a lot of anxiety and stress that I didn't know how to deal with? When I first started this, the first few weeks, most of my days were red. And so after reading what the theorists said about this, I knew that I had to develop an action plan to handle the stress, to manage the stress. The first thing that I read to do was to get rid of everything that triggers your stress. Well, that is impossible for me as a single mother of two children that is having to work two jobs just to make ends meet. I knew there was no way that I could get rid of those things, and those are probably my biggest stressors. So I started looking at other ways to manage stress, and exercise was a huge one, and better sleep quality was another one. So I said, you know what? I know I'm not sleeping enough. Let's tackle that. Let's see how I can improve my sleep quality. So I did begin to exercise a little bit more. I even bought a little stair stepper for my house. I teach Zumba at the Y, but it's not every day. So I knew I needed to do more. If it was a nice day, I might get out and walk just to get some sunshine and move. This actually led to better sleep quality for me. I also cut back on things like caffeine after a certain time, electronics after a certain time. I used to just lay in bed and doom scroll through social media, and I had to cut some of that out. Another thing that I did was just a personal choice that I chose to stop drinking alcohol during the work week. I don't have a problem with that. If I know everybody has different um, feelings about that, and sometimes I would have a glass to help me relax at the end of the day or when I was out socially with friends. But I noticed that if I had a drink or two, that I usually would be sleepy at first and then wake up in the middle of the night. So that caused me to be more depressed the next day. So I made a goal for myself to cut it completely out during the week, unless there was some special occasion like a birthday party, or like a girls' night, and only have alcohol on the weekends. And y'all, I'm telling you, this probably made a bigger impact than exercise did for my sleep quality. Was it easy? No, especially if I had a bad day. But I really feel like this helped me, and getting the better sleep and more sleep helped me have increased my green days by more than 50%. Now, there were things that happened where it might be a night where I had my daughter and she needed to talk to me and I was up late for that, or something happened. Like my dad had an accident, and so we were at the hospital, things like that. So every day couldn't be the full 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but it was better and it did make a huge difference. So, how did it go? Well, my goal was improve my sleep to help me manage my stress, and it did increase by more than 50%. I've continued to look at other ways that I can make this even better. The temperature in my house, I've checked that, because I have found that if I'm too hot, I can't sleep. I have also looked into what I am watching and reading during the day, because if there's something stressful on the news or on TV, or I have to worry about something I saw, or it might give me bad dreams because my mind, that was the last thing it heard before I went to sleep. That will disrupt my sleep too. So I am looking at other ways to continue to increase my sleep quality, so that I can in turn increase my stress management and continue to have those green days more often than not. And another thing I learned through this is that some things you just can't help. I got a couple of days that were not really good news, but I had to stop and reflect on, how did I handle it? Did I automatically jump to the worst case scenario, or did I stop and breathe and think and know that I could work my way through this if I just took a minute to think about it instead of overreacting and over emotionalizing the situation. Some other findings, as I mentioned from the beginning of this with my other project on my daughter, is that once I realized how to manage my stress and how to lower my workload and not always have to tell people yes, because I was bad about that too, because I also am a people pleaser. So taking on more than I should caused my stress level to be even worse, because I was taking on too many projects and not able to say no. And when I realized that this is what my daughter was watching me do day in and day out her whole entire life, I had programmed her to also be that way. So I had to take a deeper look into myself and how my actions and the way that I talked about myself and the way that I handled problems affected more than just me. So, had I done this project about myself before I was doing my project on my daughter, I may have found other ways to help her and to combat her issues with people pleasing and trying to grab that attention that she felt like she was not getting. I feel like in the future, now that I do know these things about myself, I will be able to better help her and maybe help others as they're going through this. I'm still learning a lot about myself as my body continues to change and my mind continues to change. But Erickson said that this next stage, and at the end of this stage that I'm at, usually leads to a little more calmness and being at peace with where we are. And I sure hope that's true, because that is what my goal is. I'm looking for that. Overall, going back to one of the theorists that I felt really um, led the way on what I was doing for my action plan, he says, it's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. And this is so true. When I realized that it wasn't what was triggering it, it was how I was reacting to it, and my personality trait of neuroticism, and how I could change that about myself through exercise and sleep, cutting out alcohol, talking more positively to myself, leaning on other people. um, all of this became true and easier for me. I know at my age and with the things I've gone through and already having autoimmune issues and things like asthma, allergies, these other things, I didn't need the stress to be affecting my health more than it already has been affected by just genetics. So I think I'm going to continue to do this journey. I am going to see what else and how else I can help. One thing that I would like to start adding to this is journaling, because sometimes keeping all of feelings inside of me causes me to be more anxious, and then it keeps me up at night. And so perhaps adding journaling to this can increase my green days even more. So I hope that this helped and it gave you some ideas. When you are having a stressful day, get outside, go exercise, work on getting more sleep. Look at what those triggers are that are causing the stress for you. And if they can be removed, remove them. And if they can't, then use these other techniques like exercise, journaling, sleeping to help you work through that stress rather than letting it cause you to react in a way that can make you ill, physically ill. So, if you've ever dealt with this, if you have more ideas where you have managed your stress that have been successful for you, please just drop them in the comments and we can work through this together. Thank you.